My mom died 2 weeks ago, and it's safe to say that I was devastated. I had been out for sunblock as the sun scorched with such vengeance it was impossible to move outside without your flesh burning. I got home and found her in the bath, under the water. The police said it was an accident or that she had killed herself. But I remember seeing the window and the blinds open, which didn't make any sense. When she would take a bath to cool down and avoid the blistering sun, she would always close the blinds. But the police weren't going to listen to a 14-year-old, let alone one who spoke with an American accent and an awkward stutter. I had been homeschooled in a small town in Mexico. It had been hard for me growing up there as I couldn't speak the language well. While I picked up bits here and there, my mom was agoraphobic, meaning she was scared of going outside. At least that's what she told me. She'd kept me inside and isolated for the longest time, and it wasn't until her death that I found out why. When she died, the local police came and took her body away. I actually stayed the night alone for the first time ever in our small apartment in the hills. The police said I was safer there than at the precinct, where they had no room, nor anyone to look after me from the revolving door of bad guys that continually made it their home. That night was terrible. I missed her so bad. They told me to gather any belongings I wanted to take, so I packed up all my stuff into a suitcase and then went through the drawers in my mom's room. Within was a letter addressed to me, sealed by her lipstick. In the morning, it wasn't the Mexican police who came for me, but a man from the American consulate. He said he was going to take me home. When he saw that I was confused, he told me that my mom had done a very bad thing 10 years ago and fled America with me. She was wanted by the FBI for my own kidnapping. Now he could see on my face that I was shocked, but then proceeded, as he must, to deliver me even more shocking news. That my dad was still alive. He asked me if I was aware, and I said I wasn't. Mom had always told me he died in a plane crash, and that we were alone in the world. I had so many questions, and he did his best to answer them the little bit that he knew on the way to the airport. It wasn't a direct flight home, and they had tied a thick package of documents around my neck, which were to track and guide my progress. As I got on each plane, I met a different flight escort who tore off a piece of paper and then gave me advice about my dad. One flight attendant even said that it was a good thing that my mom had died, as she was evil, and now, and only now, would I meet my dad. On the last leg of the flight, I looked out the window and saw the fields of Ohio below. I was met at the gate by someone from the American Social Service Agency. She was late, but not as late as my dad. Apparently, while they had reached out to him initially to tell him of my discovery, they had lost communication with him. I stayed 2 days in a group home that wasn't very pleasant. Both the staff and the other kids were nasty. At some point, I was reading my mom's letter when the tallest of them tried to take it from me. He was mean and bullied all the others. I jammed my fist so hard into his jaw that he went dizzy and fell to the ground. At dinner, no one said anything, as they were all happy that I had stood up to him. The group home was a lot of drama, as a sharp kitchen knife went missing. Out of the 6 kids, they accused 4 of us, including me, of taking it. The only quiet time was in the backyard where there was a small pond, and I saw my reflection and I thought about my dad and what he looked like. I knew he wouldn't be Tom Cruise-ish looking, as I was pretty weird looking myself. I figured maybe he might have the same small wide eyes and big pointy ears as me, as my mom had small cute eyes and little ears. I obviously got them from someone. When I got the phone call that my dad was finally on his way over, I was petrified. The nerves were intense, probably because I was about to be with a stranger who I was to call Dad. I watched from the window as he stepped out of his truck. He was taller and stronger looking version of me and walked with a limp. When I went out the doorway to greet him, he smiled and happily gave me a hug. He was strong, and he smelt of cigarettes. On the way to his house, he asked me about Mexico, how I liked living there. He asked me a few questions about my mom and then told me he was happy I was found. When we got there, it was late, and I said I was tired. He lived alone and didn't have much room for me. I was to have the couch. He gave me a pillow and turned on the TV. It was cool watching it, as Mom seldom let me. He sat with me for a while, and I felt his eyes lingering on me. Occasionally I'd look back, but he wouldn't look away, and instead just continued his stare. Nor did he smile. I imagined someone who was happy to see their son would smile. I felt there was something else going on in his head. The truth is, he wasn't good at hiding it. I got up and went to the bathroom. It was small, and there were spider webs on the ceiling. The wood had rot on it, and so did the walls. I could even see through some of the holes as I sat on the toilet. I could see him continually looking towards me. I turned on the tap water to make the noise, to mask the opening of my mom's letter. My eyes lingered on the main details. John, if you ever get this, then something bad may have happened to me. Now, I pray it was an accident or by natural causes. But if something suspicious happened, I need you to know this. Your father is alive. I can't express how bad of a man he is. I took you to Mexico when you were 5 because I knew that he would kill me and you like he had done to the others before. It wasn't a matter of if, but when. We lived in isolation so he couldn't track us down. He held me prisoner for 4 years, during which time I had you. You were the only thing that made my life worth living, and I love you immensely. Know that if he ever finds out where you live, he will kill you. He is pure evil. I love you, my sweet dear son, and I will always be there in spirit with you. Stay strong. As I glanced back up to the wall, his eyes were pressed against it, looking in. You okay in there? He asked. I said I was, and after a few, he left for his room. The sunburn on his shoulders should have fully confirmed my immediate suspicion that he had found us in Mexico and killed Mom. But deep down, a part of me wanted none of this to be true. If he truly was evil, I'd be completely alone. When I heard him snore, I scoured through his coat and came across this morning's airline ticket from Mexico. That night I went to sleep holding the sharp knife I stole from the group home under my pillow. We're up now, and he's cooking me breakfast. Then he said he'd show me around out back. The knife hasn't left my side, and it will be used today. It's not a matter of if, just when. By lunch, we were both still alive. I didn't really expect him to go after me, as my return was a local feel-good news story. A journalist had come to the door earlier in the morning, and Dad said a few things to him before he was on his way. It made me feel safer, as so many people would know if something happened to me. My anger about Mom was escalating. As he chopped carrots, I watched his knife in his hand to see how it matched up to mine. I watched as he held it like a pencil with ease and went through the carrots with such speed, the way you'd clear unwanted screens on your phone. I so badly wanted him to slip up and slice through a fingertip. I offered to help, but he refused it, saying that I'd been through a lot and I should just take it easy. But as I sat, I grew bored of watching television. So without asking, I made a beeline for the door. It squeaked loudly, but that coincided with his kettle whistling, so I wasn't heard. I walked around the farm. It was very run down and very muddy from all the rain last night. A lot needed fixing, and it didn't look like he knew how to fix it. Or maybe it just stopped caring. A few chickens were running around, and some pigs kept in by a gate that was about to fall down. There was a thin dog tied up by the barn. I could see from far away that it hadn't eaten much and probably been kicked into the side one too many times. It started to rain, so I went back towards the main house, and from the outside I could see in through a large, dirty window. He was focused on cooking about 10 hamburgers. Before he could glance up, I went back to the door and froze. I was hit by a strange sense of what I'd just seen. As I entered the house, this time making sure not to creak the door, the notion of why he was cooking so much food played in my mind. My brain said to shrug it off, maybe he'd freeze it or had plans for an animal to eat it. But my gut, for whatever reason, said it didn't make sense and that something was up. Dinner, I must say, was really good. The hamburger was great. He seemed a little jittery. Every time I asked for something from the kitchen, he insisted that he would get it. Again, my mind went to the extra hamburgers. I thought about it constantly, just asking for things. Ketchup, napkin, mayonnaise, but didn't want to antagonize him. The more innocuous I could be, the more chance I had of figuring out what he was up to. He told me to watch more TV and then sent me to bed, never once letting me near the kitchen. Now, I didn't sleep, but pretended to. It was impossibly hard, but after about 3 hours, I heard the door creak open. I carefully opened my eyes and caught the blur of a tiny tray disappear into the rain. As the door closed, I put on my shoes and ran to it, seeing him with a flashlight trudging toward the barn. His dog started barking and then yelped when he kicked it quiet. Sometimes I hate being right about things. As he disappeared from view, I went out there. The rain hit hard, but I had to see where that tray was going. As I got to the edge of the barn, the dog looked up and I could instantly tell it was going to bark and give me away, so I lunged forward to it and stroked its head, as my mom used to do to me. I don't think that dog has ever felt any affection. It seemed puzzled by it at first. I whispered that he'd be okay, and he spun his head around into my lap as I peeked around the barn door. The tray was on the floor and contained 3 plates of burgers and fries. Dad had moved a bale of hay, and underneath it was a trap door that presumably led to a basement. He pulled on the rope, opening it, and then peered in. Suddenly, he yelled like a madman, telling whoever was in there to stand back or feel his wrath. I don't know if it was his loudness or the distorted angle of his face, but it made him look like a real monster, and it terrified me. I backed away quickly and ran to the house, entered, and jumped back into my bed. It wasn't long after he came back. I heard the door creak, and I knew he was leaning over me, staring. I pretended I was asleep, but my heart was beating out of my chest with such velocity that I'm surprised he couldn't see it. "John?" he suddenly questioned. "John, are you awake?" I turned, making a yawning, thinking quickly about how I should continue my desperate Oscar-winning performance. Should I say something or just lay still? I opened my eyes slowly, and his closeness scared the shit out of me. I let out a shriek, so realistic because it was real. He moved back, turning on a lamp. "Were you outside just now?" "What?" I asked, yawning again and shaking my head. His eyes glanced around, landing on my hair and on the carpet. Holy shit, I suddenly realized my hair was damp, and I probably dragged in mud from the outside. "I just opened the front door to let some air in," I meekly added. I yawned and stretched out, really making a grasp for the knife under my pillow. Once I had it solidly in my hands, I looked at him in the eyes, and I thought maybe I should strike first. "Okay," he said, standing back, and turned off the light. I didn't let my guard down, but it appeared that he believed me. "Sorry for waking you." And at that, he walked out the door and into his room. I lay there for about an hour before my eyes couldn't fight the collapse. Then I woke in the morning. The house felt empty. I badly wanted to get up and go to the barn to see what was under it, but not knowing his whereabouts, it was too dangerous. My mind went back to my mom's letter, where she wrote about him killing others. Now, my gut told me who was under there, but it didn't tell me what they looked like or how he had got them there, or what state of mental wellness or physical welfare they were in. It just told me he was holding them in there, and it said to me I had to help them. It was a cold morning as I trudged to the middle of a large open field. There were woods to one side, and on the other, more fields to the horizon. I felt truly in the middle of nowhere, and even worse, alone. Now, my mom had always been there for me in moments like this, with a reassuring hug and warm words of encouragement. She always told me I could be whatever I wanted to be and do whatever I wanted to do. I don't think she ever imagined the be was to survive him, and the do was attempting to rescue whomever Dad had kept under the ground. That morning he showed me around the farm. This land turned out to be more extensive than I realized, full of several abandoned and rotten buildings. There were 2 barns. The first one was where they were being kept, and it was guarded all the times by his malnourished dog. Every time I crossed into that dog's sight, it would bark. If my dad were inside, he'd instantly come out, and I realized that after a while, the dog's position was strategic. It was his alarm dog, which would make my upcoming task almost impossible. The other barn was bigger, and about a half a mile from the farmhouse. As I approached it with Dad, I could smell something nasty in the air. We climbed a ladder and onto the second floor and looked out from a balcony over a stunning view of pigs. Hundreds and hundreds of them. It was like one of the most spectacular things I'd ever seen. I stood watching. My dad jokingly shoved me forward. It wasn't hard enough to make me fall, but so unexpected, I jumped. "You don't want to land in there," he stated. "Pigs will go through bone like butter if they're hungry enough." I don't think he was joking, and he said it like I was a student, very seriously. I just nodded and we climbed back down. I spent the rest of the morning feeding pigs and chickens. I got tired of it quickly, but I could see how all the lifting got Dad in such shape. Around noon, a truck came, and I loaded dead pig carcasses on it. The man picking up was weird. He had 2 missing front teeth and spoke with a strange accent. My dad said he was English, but I couldn't understand much. In the afternoon, my dad showed me how he killed the pigs. He shot an electric current into their brain, then hoisted them onto a rail to drain all the blood. He then dipped the pigs into a scalder, which contained boiling water to remove the hair. He said I didn't have to shock the pig if I didn't want to, but as I was getting started, it might be easiest. And he then cut off the head and sliced the pig into 2 halves. To be honest, I nearly threw up at every new step he taught me, but I concealed it well, and he seemed to enjoy the glee I pretended to show. Earlier at breakfast, he had mentioned how he'd hoped I'd be like him. So here I was, trying to fulfill his fantasy. My fantasy, however, had me boiling his evil corpse in the scalder. And when we were on the second floor of that balcony, I considered pushing him off. But I was too nervous, feeling that any misstep now would be fatal without a doubt. I know he would slice me in half like those pigs. At the end of the process, he said he'd give me a task I'd like. "I want you to pick out the piglets we'll slaughter tomorrow and put them in there," he exclaimed, genuinely believing that I was enjoying him, his company, and this experience. I made sure not to show any weakness, as I could tell he wouldn't understand it. As he left towards the first barn, I looked over at the poor little pigs innocently staring back at me. I thought if I could rescue who was ever under the barn and kill Dad, I could celebrate victory by letting the pigs go too. But for now, I had to pick some and move them into the killing section. I think my belief that I wasn't really sending them to their deaths helped a lot. That night I showered and washed all the blood off. Dad came in from the outside with some empty plates and he began washing them. I knew he had gone to the barn when I was in the bathroom. The pipe outside rattled so loud. Dad could tell when I was in there. My hope was that at some point he'd shower and then I could make it to the barn myself and use the rattling pipe as my cover. Dinner was a little awkward as he kept staring at me without talking. But I had my soup and casually requested to go for a walk when I finished the dishes. He said he was tired and going to retire early. Once away from the farmhouse, I knew this could be my chance. While I worked all day, my thoughts centered around how to approach the dog without it barking. I pocketed some food, hoping to bribe it with it, but as I approached to let it out, a huge wail came from the dog. My dad immediately burst out the front door, asking me where I was going. But before I could reply, he told me the barn was off limits. It had mold. I nodded, okay, and thought he had gone back inside, when suddenly the door opened again. "Make sure you don't go anywhere near it or you'll regret it," he warned with a ferociousness I had never seen before. I nodded again and then walked the other way as the door closed. I threw the food across to the dog in hopes that he would eat it and remain quiet on my return. I circled the main farmhouse, trying to get a glance into the window to see where Dad was. As I passed his bedroom window, his lights went off, plunging it into darkness. And I waited, in the hopes that he'd hit the shower. But after 5 minutes of staring at the black sky, I felt that he opted for sleep. I took a deep breath and then exhaled, summoning up the courage to do what I had to do. I approached the barn from a different direction, hoping to catch the dog off guard. And as I neared, my heart started beating faster, and I treated every step with care, as any noise could give me away. I had the dog in my sights. Now, it hadn't seen me, as I'd come up from behind. Now, I didn't realize this, but dogs jump in fright just like humans. They do. It recoiled as I touched its back, and I knew the next split second was either make or break. But luck was on my side. Rather than it yelp and alert my dad, it motioned forward for me to rub its head. Hastily, I moved the bale of hay, revealing the secret trapdoor. I inhaled again, nervous what I was about to uncover. With the dog at my heel, I pulled it open. Bars laid across some stairs that led into darkness. I couldn't squeeze in, and I could see another key was necessary. My eyes lingered, trying to adjust. I feared what was in there, but considered if they thought I was my dad, they would be fearful of me even more. I leaned close to the bars and I whispered, "Hello? Hello?" At first, there was silence, but then I heard something scuffling down there. Suddenly, a hand shot out of the bars and I jumped back in shock. "Help me! Please!" A girl about my age was there, and then another dirt-ridden arm shot through the bars. "Please, get us out of here, help us!" She was perhaps 17. Putrid mud covered her face, and as she reached for me, I instinctively withdrew my foot. I urged them to be quiet, but the younger one screamed out, "Help us!" And I inadvertently slammed her hand down upon the dog, who yelped and started howling. Now my body shook, as behind me, the light in the farmhouse turned on, and the dog kept barking and barking. I knew it was only a matter of minutes before he would come. My eyes locked on the hay, with the aim of covering the trap door. But before I could act, one of the girls reached up and grabbed the dog by the back of its neck and with all her strength rammed its poor nose into the bars. I think she was just trying to shut it up, but it was so thin from abuse that its neck snapped under all the pressure, and it let out a horrendous screech before it went dead. Literally. I kicked its body away and then slammed down the door before moving the hail bay back across it, shouting in a whisper their way, "Keep quiet!" I picked up the dog's body as Dad burst out the front door with a madman's look in his eyes. He stomped in my direction and then stopped, seeing the lifeless animal dangling from my arms. "What did you do?" It was right then and there that I said something that I am still shocked came out of my mouth. At the time, my gut kept telling me he wanted an apprentice, and this seemed like my only line of defense. "It yapped at me, so I broke its neck," I said casually. At first, he eyed me suspiciously. I caught his glance over to the trap door, which I had successfully covered. "You broke its neck?" he asked, in a state of disbelief. I nodded. He took a step back. I'm sorry if it meant something to you. It just annoyed the living shit out of me. I lied. Well, I'd only known my dad for 2 days. I was following my instinct. He stepped forward, raising his hand. He was either going to hit me or place it on my shoulders, as he did. Like father, like son, he said proudly as he pulled me towards him. I knew you were more like me than your mom. I smiled back, wanting to crush his skull right then and there. He indicated that I follow him back to the farmhouse, saying he'd give me a special treat in the morning. As I closed the front door behind me, I knew I wasn't going to wait until then. I went to the couch and pretended to fall asleep. After 10 minutes, I got up to go back to the barn. As I opened the door, I froze. He was standing there waiting for me with a large knife in his hand. He caught me by surprise. I stepped back nervously. "What are you doing?" he asked, nice enough to make me think the knife wasn't for me. But his unassuming manner could have been an act, so I wasn't dropping my guard. Besides, while that blade was for cutting pigs, I didn't think that he'd be out working this late. "I can't sleep," I replied, which was the partial truth, but helped me sound convincing. "I didn't hear you leave," I inquired, trying to gauge my current danger level. For a fact, I knew Dad hadn't gone out the front door, as it would have creaked, which meant he was out here sneaking. "I'm just cleaning some things up," he stated. And with that, we both heard the shudder of an old engine rumbling in the distance. The headlights of a truck approached. It stopped midway between the farmhouse and the barn. The Toothless got out, while my dad's face was stone cold and hard to read. Toothless was easy. He was both curious and confused as to why I was there. "The boy? He knows?" Holy f***. This guy's stupidity made my heart race, and in a split second, I realized he and my dad were partners. His asinine question fished for an answer that might genuinely expose me. "Know what?" I quickly snapped back. Toothless opened up the back of his truck. Where I had helped load the pigs' carcasses was now a tarp. My dad turned to me. "I have to take care of some stuff. It's getting cold. Get some sleep, stay inside. We have a lot to do in the morning." It was more of an order than a request, and I nodded and went back in. Once inside, I realized I may have agreed too quickly. I couldn't tell if I'd given myself away by instantly following his instructions. So I peeked through the crack of the door to see Dad and Toothless walking to the barn. I felt relieved, but my stomach churned as it occurred to me they were off to do no good to the girls. I hurried into Dad's room, but it was locked. I had choices. I could be a coward and retreat to the couch, or do what was right and risk my life. It was then that I decided there would be no turning back. I rammed the door with my shoulder, breaking the lock on the other side, and I scanned his room looking for a gun. I tried the closet. Nothing. Under the bed. Nothing. My heart screamed for me to slow down, but the urgency and the adrenaline drove me faster. I tried some drawers. Nothing. In the cabinet. Nothing. Under the cabinet. On the cabinet. Behind the cabinet. Nothing. 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 I knew there was something in here to find because he locked the door, but it was too well hidden for now. I went back to the kitchen and grabbed a screwdriver from the shelf. I paused for a moment, running scenarios quickly through my head. My screwdriver versus a large, sharp, experienced, deadly pig carving knife? Was I overthinking? Screw it. I burst out the front door and ran towards the barn. I slowed as I came across them. The hay bale was shifted, and the trap door was exposed. Dad stood there with his key, about to open the padlock, when he noticed me. Toothless shifted uncomfortably as I approached. They were both bigger and stronger than me, and I just hoped I was smarter. My mom always taught me to treat women with respect, and at that moment, I had to go against everything she had ever held dear. "I want those bitches for myself." I tried to appear mean and angry, but I was severely shaking inside. "I want to kill them." I stared at Toothless, who seemed to buy it. Now the girls down below became hysterical, which means they bought it too. How about the one that mattered most? My eyes turned to Dad. I straightened my posture. As Mom said, if an animal is ever about to attack you, you want to seem taller and bigger than it and try to scare it away. He wiped his nose and then stood up. I felt his eyes look deep into mine. There was no way he would believe me. His eyes glanced at Toothless and then back to me. "Kill him!" he shouted. This was it. Live or die. My execution was ordered. But it wasn't over. I moved quickly. Toothless was caught off guard by my ferocity. He was shocked as I jammed my screwdriver deep into his Adam's apple. He barely registered what happened until I pulled it back like an oar on a rowboat, the way my dad showed me to carve off a pig's head. He hit the ground and he was frantically trying to stop the blood flow. I'm pretty sure, however, it was already too late for him, and it was just some type of reflex, like a snake without a head still wiggling in the dirt. With the screwdriver lodged in Toothless, I spun towards my dad, who appeared relaxed and calm. "Well done." He smiled and congratulated me. What? Why wasn't he on me? Why was he so nonchalant? Moments ago when he yelled, "Kill him," I instantly assumed that he was addressing Toothless, telling Toothless to kill me. But if I was wrong then, but correct in my read now, he was actually instructing me to kill Toothless. I went with it and walked over casually. "Can you teach me to drive his truck?" I asked him as I sat beside Dad. For a few minutes, we both watched as Toothless took his last breath, and he nodded. Then we peered into the darkness below at the two screaming girls. He looked at me the way Mom used to. "I was going to get rid of them as I didn't know you knew," he confided. "We can keep them if you want." "Are they cute?" I asked. "I can't tell with all that crap on their faces." "I can shower them naked for you if you want," he offered. "Then you can see for yourself." "Yeah, I'd love that." He stood and went to a nearby box, pulling out some handcuffs, and he threw them through the grate, which clinked on the ground. To my shock, the girls handcuffed themselves before he even opened the padlock, and they walked out slowly. They were pale and gaunt, dirty and barely clothed. They were now silent and reminded me of my dad's trembling dog. My guess is, too, that they feared a beating. "They look better cleaned up," he continued. They had a familiarity, but while I couldn't quite pinpoint what it was, their presence now in the open made me nervous. I came back to the old habit of rubbing the bracelet that my mom gave me on my birthday. As Dad tied the girls to a post, I bent down to help and take out the key from the lock when, shit, I didn't need to tell Dad I dropped the key as he could hear it gently hit the ground. "Sorry, do you have a flashlight?" I asked, feeling like a clumsy idiot. He shook his head for me to mind out of the way. As he went down the first step, he suddenly hesitated, but by then, it was too late. I rammed my full weight onto his lower back, angling, and the intensity threw him off balance. It was dark and deep down there, so I don't know how he landed, but I closed that grate and quickly locked it. I didn't want to face his wrath, so I shut the trapdoor and moved the bale of hay over it, catching my breath. I sat nervously, rubbing at my wrist, knowing Mom would have been proud of me that dropping her bracelet was his undoing. I turned to the girls, whose eyes widened like lost poor lambs being led to their slaughter. They were scared of me, and I couldn't blame them as they heard my urge to kill them. I couldn't free them instantly as I didn't know how they'd react. Instead, I went to the house and brought them some blankets and got them some food from the kitchen. I assured them that they were going to be set free and that we can get in Toothless's truck and get home. When I mentioned the word home, they shared a sad look that was familiar. The oldest asked who I was, and I told her the story of my mom taking me to Mexico, and I told them everything in detail so they could be comfortable knowing that I wasn't going to hurt them. And at the end of it, they both started to cry. I don't know what had set them off, but I felt bad, and now they were about to be free and in tears. As I unlocked their handcuffs, they both hugged me, but didn't let go. It became uncomfortable, so I tried to cheer them up by saying soon they'd be back with their families. And while I spoke, I was still distracted by what I would do with him. Should I let him rot in there or call the police? So many questions rushed through my mind, but the one question coming up would change my life forever. We broke the hug, and the oldest had a different look, full of love, affection, and joy. It was strange seeing that from a complete stranger. As I felt more profound and thankful, she whispered something into the younger one's ear, whose eyes widened at the realization. "You're our brother." It's safe to say that I didn't see that coming. But as I would learn, Lori and Anne had been kept there for almost all of their childhood. Lori was a year old when I was born, so she didn't remember me the same way I didn't remember her. Anne did have a recollection and always held on to the hope that our mom would come back for her. Why Mom never did, we'll never know. Perhaps the fear of seeing him again was just too much. What we do know, however, is that we're together, and we're staying on the farm, and there's no need for us to leave right now. I haven't been back to the barn to see Dad yet. They have. They're dropping him some scraps like he dropped to them. And while we're back and forth whether to kill Dad or outright keep him alive for all the hell he put us through, the one thing I can be sure of is that will now be a family decision.